What's up, summoners? King Blair here. With the new RTA season starting in 3 days, I wanted to talk about the top 5 units you need to be watching out for this upcoming season. So that's whether if you want to build these units because you think they sound cool and they sound spicy, or if you want to try to find ways to actually counter these units, or if you just want the knowledge of things that people have been using in the preseason and late last season, so you can start thinking about what drafts you may want to try or be wary of what your opponent may pick, then this is what this video is hoping to do. Now, with all these type of videos, there's always an opportunity that something will change, especially with new unit releases like Samurai Seria and potential buffs that they usually give out. But for the most part, I do expect most, if not all, these units to remain around the same, if not stronger, although maybe a little bit weaker depending on the unit releases. This still should be relevant to some extent. So with that disclaimer out of the way, let's get right into it. If you do like the video though, make sure you like, subscribe, and join the Discord server, link in the description, and let me know in the comments what top 5 you would want to see. But with that, let's get first into the honorable mention, and there are a lot. So the way that the honorable mentions is a lot of units that we know are strong, that have just been strong for a very long time from last season, and I just want to point them out again to you guys so you guys remember that they exist. And I wanted to add more spicier units to talk about for longer in the actual top 5, as well as just the collab heroes, right? So why the collab heroes under the honorable mention, not the top 5? Because of the flavor of the month type thing. We don't know if these units are just flavor of the month, and the reason people are using them a lot is because they are new toys, right? And that does happen a lot every time a new unit's released. People like to use them, right? They're fun, right? It's new, it's fresh, right? So it may just be the new feeling, or it might actually be because they are quite strong. So I'm leaning more towards that they are strong and that they will have a presence, including Amelia in Bruiser's top team compositions, playing very similar to Diane, although a little bit more aggressive with the extra CR push as well as the cleansing and the attack buff, and the nice little healing that she does provide with the S3 and the S1 goes a long way. Right, it's honestly, she has a special place in my heart because I've been loving using Amelia. I just feel so much more stronger with my Bruiser and like tank drafts when I have her in there. So I'm definitely probably going to be using her more. But again, it could be a new flavor of the month for everyone else, which is why you may or may not see her, although she does seem pretty strong. And then again, same thing with Rem. It may just be a flavor of the month, but she really does remind me of old Charles, right? When he was at full power. The slow build that's super tanky, super high damage on counter seems to be the way that people are going with Rem. And it is very, very terrifying, just like old Charles, right? Where it's like, if I hit her, she counters me and decreases defense, and I could get screwed. But then if I go for her allies that could be more threatening, then she could counter and just absolutely destroy my team, right? So it puts in a very, very weird situation where you're like, man, I don't want to kill anyone else on her team. I want to kill her. But at the same time, she's tanky and I'm going to take a long time trying to kill her, right? So very, very reminiscent of the old Charles, although of course the AoE counter is just pretty nuts on her. So she does seem like she'll have a lot of potential, and a lot of people seem to really like the playstyle. So we may see her more both as a sort of anti-cleave option as well as just a very fun kind of Charles style unit, right? So again, not quite sure. Honorable mention just because she's very, very new to the meta. Then for the other honorable mentions, this I'm not going to spend too much time on because we've known they're strong for a very long time. But things like Landy, the only reason I'm bringing her up again is because counter build tank Landy is going to be becoming the more popular build. Most people have gotten rid of their speed Landys. People were dealing with Landy way too easily with Bazaar and Stene to a point where like speed Landy was getting popped before she could even do her S3. Well, with tank Landy, you have the opportunity to counterattack as well as surviving that initial burst to set up that incredibly good speed buff and still do really good damage, right? So counter Landy on Proof or on Guiding Light or on Bloodstone has become significantly more popular. So I want to just point it out because I use tank Landy a lot, and the amount of times that people underestimate how tanky Landy can really be has lost them a lot of games, right? So just know that that build is becoming extremely popular. And then of course, Carrot is still very relevant in the meta. Not as strong anymore because of the 2 new collab heroes, but still puts so much drafting pressure that it's still worth mentioning. Yes, this unit's still broken. Yes, you should still build her because she's free. Yes, she still has a lot of PvP presence, right? A little bit on the decline, but just because you go from being a pick or ban to just a very strong pick does not mean you're bad, right? So it's still something that you need to watch out for and you need to have counters ready because she's still a very big menace on the board. And then of course, Maid Chloe, who we all know is super broken and my permanent ban because this unit is disgusting, right? This unit just, the healing and everything is just gross. But that is for the honorable mentions. These are units that we've known are powerful for a long time. Since last season, and I didn't want to take up too much time talking about them when there were some other spicier units. Right, so at number 5, we actually have none other than Charlotte. Charlotte is shaping up to be another amazing DPS. And the more people are using her, the more I'm starting to realize, man, this unit has a lot of potential. And she's slowly creeping up on my must-build units. The reason why Charlotte has become so good is the rise of Landy as well as Violet, as well as still Stena just being in the meta, right? And her new EE really did fill out one of her weaknesses, which is that she would get lapped and she didn't get a lot of damage. Well, now with all this new buffs, she has become significantly stronger because of how much AoE she's able to pump out. The S1 is AoE and can decrease attack of something like a Landy, right? And if you hit Violet, you can also decrease his attack, which is very nice. And of course, the unhealable, if it hits a Violet or if it's any type of Soul Weaver style team, can be very, very crushing if they don't have cleansing, right? And then of course, there's the amount of AoE damage that she does. She tends to be very, very tanky, and she has a very good matchup against Violet because typically, for Charlotte, she will be on a lifesteal build with Symbol of Unity. Symbol of Unity giving her a higher chance to hit Violet. And if she does hit Violet, she's the fire element, so she'll do extra damage, right? Which means that you're potentially killing Violet in just 2 shots, right? And even if the Violet counterattacks on you, then you just get a defense buff for the next turn, right? So it's one of those things that's like, even if you miss on the worst scenario, you're getting a defense buff for the next turn, which means Violet's not doing as much damage to you, which means you're doing more damage to the enemy, which means you're winning quicker and you're gonna just out DPS your opponent, right? And the lifesteal just makes her so hard to take out and just so much damage that she's able to output. She's looking like an amazing DPS for the future. So if you're someone that uses a lot of Landy, a lot of Violet, a lot of Stena, really, really do watch out for Charlotte because people are starting to build their Charlottes. She can be a menace in the right situations and honestly just auto win the game if they don't have a way to deal with her. So Charlotte looking really, really spicy for this upcoming season. At number 4, we have none other than Politis. Now, Politis keeps getting better and better with time, as was predicted upon her release. The main reason being this skill is incredibly good in almost all situations because of how prevalent Soul Weavers are starting to become, right? With this skill, not only are you cutting things like General Purgus, or even if you're cleaving, cutting things like Sage Ball, but the fact that you're able to counterattack on command with Lelo Violin means that if Maid Chloe does her S3, you can come in with this S2, potentially strip, do damage, and kill the unit that just got revived. So really good counter towards something like Maid Chloe and even Amelia to an extent, because it just kind of locks them out of wanting to do their skills. And even with things like Violet, Violet will proc this S2, meaning that yes, he gets the apple, but he's also taking potentially a lot of damage, and he's not getting as much CR push from the S1. So Politis, really, really solid looking unit for the meta right now, both for cleave and for not cleave, right? For cleave, she has become a massive menace because it stops the opponent from using a lot of using like their CR pushing units like Sage Ball, or even things like General Purgus, or even things like Elena, right? She does really good in those situations for cleave and has damage with the S3 as well as putting the cannot be buff. She's just incredibly good for cleaving, and just not cleaving just as a counter to Soul Weavers for more aggressive teams, right? So Politis looking really, really powerful, getting better and better with time. And just the damage that she can pump out is very, very nice as well. So yeah, Politis, really, really solid unit. Whether you put her on Leleval in for non-cleave teams, or when she's on book for a cleave team and you're doing dummy damage and stopping a lot of your counters. She seems very, very powerful. And then of course, you've heard me say his name, but we have none other than Violet. He got buffed right as the season ended. So a lot of people may not have had the pleasure of going against Violet. This unit really has become a menace to a lot of people and has kept a lot of water units in check. One of the reasons Rem and Amelia are not running super rampant countering Carrot is because of the strength that Violet has. The fact that his evasion starts at the beginning of the fight makes it so he always has 100% evasion against water units as long as you have a Moonlight Dreamblade. It's just, you can't do anything, right? And the 55% chance to evade all the time has also made him a really good counter to Cleave, because he typically tends to be very, very tanky. If Cleave misses 1 or 2 of their critical skills, he survives, he's counterattacking, he's potentially cutting with the CR, and then he's one-shotting a unit with his big S3, right? So Violet, just incredibly, incredibly powerful unit. If you haven't faced him, you will. He's typically very, very tanky, and Craw doesn't really counter him either because he usually has so much HP on his build, right? So Violet, incredibly powerful unit. How would you counter him? You have things like Charlotte with Symbol of Unity, probably being one of the best counters to him. Politis, if you're cleaving, does pretty okay into him. You also do have things like Spectre Tenebria and Landy that do pretty well into him, as well as Carrot, because Carrot can apply burns even through miss if he counters on you, right? So again, he does have counters, but the RNG can really mess up someone's day. I have had my Violets solo Charlotte and Carrots before, right? Just because if they can't hit me and I hit my S3, it's over for them, right? It's just, Violet is an incredibly powerful unit, and you will 100% be seeing him next season. But now, at number 2, we have some spicier units for this list, and we have none other than Straze. Now, Straze is the most recent addition to the new ML roster, and he really has started showing why he is worthy of the title of God Killer. The big reason being just the damage he's able to output. It's just incredibly strong, right? Typically, bruisers and tank teams are common in RTA, but with the presence of Straze, he becomes a really good counter pick into these very heavy tank teams. And the thing is, you don't have to be cleaving to utilize Straze. With Amelia and with General Purgus teams, you can also just draft them in more aggressive bruiser teams and still just get a 4v3 type situation where you just one-shot their tank, do a ton of AoE damage, and then have follow-up the following turns to strip their buffs and do a little bit more damage. And this skill does more damage than I thought it would, right? It actually hits really hard. It does a significant amount of AoE damage, and I've had teams just get two-shotted by Strazes, even though I have a full bruiser type team, because my CC will die to this S3 and the rest of my team will die to the follow-up S2, and there's not a lot you can do in that situation unless you have some form of strip. So Straze becoming really, really powerful and just really showing his true potential in RTA and further on. For cleaving, he's become an incredibly powerful unit to just crack these tank teams that typically try to just tank out the cleave, right? That's no longer really that viable when there's a Straze on the board, and it forces a ban or forces you to just lose a unit. There are ways that people are starting to deal with it, such as using Make Chloe, because Make Chloe can just bring back your units, as well as just give the invincibility. And that people are also using things like Senya, because Senya can have a lot of HP and a lot of attack at the same time, tanking the Straze if necessary and potentially living. And we'll see more and more tech come out as Straze becomes more and more popular, right? But again, very, very strong in a unit you really do need to start thinking about. And then last, but definitely not least, we have Pavel at number 1. Now, the reason I put him here is because I really do think that Cleave is going to see a very strong season this season. They've been getting a lot of units that have aided cleaving. They've gotten Straze, they've gotten Buffed Operator Sigrid, they have gotten, they're getting closer Charles, right? And they have fully incorporated Politis, which was supposed to be one of their biggest counters, right? So it has gotten to a point where Cleave is becoming very strong, and the unit spearheading Cleave, it is going to be Pavel. Cleave teams without Pavel are significantly weaker. When you fight a Cleave without Pavel versus with Pavel, you will feel the difference. The reason why Cleave Pavel is so good is because of how high his base speed is, how high people are really building him, like in terms of speed, and what he can do, right? So typically, as long as you're able to get 2 mages, which is really easy, because you can easily put in Politis and then just another mage, right? To get 2 books, you're able to soul burn an S2 that gives attack buff to himself, as well as your highest attack ally. And then you're able to follow up and one-shot a unit on your opponent's side, right? So when you think Pavel Straze, you're giving your Straze attack buff with this skill, and then you're going and killing one squishy, and Straze kills the other squishy, right? It's just so much damage that you're able to do, and you don't have to set him up. He sets himself up as long as he has souls, right? And he sets up the rest of your cleave. If you're not trying to get outsped, you are going to be just one-shotting units. The other thing is that with Violet being one of the more common ways people try to stop cleave, this skill does not trigger counterattacks, which means that even if you miss on Violet, doesn't even matter, right? You get another shot, and if you put him on Symbol of Unity, then you have a higher shot of hitting Violet, and you're most likely going to be winning the game because you're going to be able to hit him with this S3 more likely, right? You have a higher chance. So there's a lot to say about Pavel and how strong he is. One thing I will say though is if you're trying to build him, he requires pretty insane gear. If he's anything below 270, 280 speed, you're not going to be able to use Pavel properly, right? It'll be very hard for you to actually get him through and for him to do his job. He needs to be in a dedicated cleave. But if you do get him in that cleave, he just pushes cleave to the next level, right? If cleave is normally at a B or A type rank, with Pavel, they get close to S rank, right? It really just pushes them over the edge. So that is going to be it for this Top 5 Tuesday. I hope you all enjoyed and are ready for some of these units when they do come. But that is all I got for you guys today, and I will see you next time. Peace.